Are you struggling with your Instagram and Facebook? You know, they just take so much time and you're not getting the results you're after. Well, in this episode, I'll be sharing an interview I had with social media marketing guru Tony Aston, who shares the reasons why a social media manager is necessary for small business owners and gives us an idea of how much it's going to cost and why it's such great value. Let's get into it. Hi Tony, thank you so much for joining me on the Side Hustlers Handbook. I'm so excited to have you here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So Tony, you're a social media and digital marketing guru and the owner of 2T Startup. So I'm really excited to have you because you are so knowledgeable in the space of social media and digital marketing, something that side hustlers are definitely struggling with, especially when people are starting their own business, trying to work out whether they should be doing it all themselves or whether they should be hiring someone to help them out. So I'd love you to go through a bit about your experience so far and why you started to a T and any challenges you've sort of faced so far.
So I started to a T in 2015 and I was working in marketing for about 8 years before that. The reason I started to a T was because I started to see the struggle that startups were having, and that wasn't just about how to get their product out there. It was smaller things. It was like knowing what branding was, knowing what resources were available, knowing who their target audience was, and then on top of that, it was also the budget restraints that they faced as well, because we all know what bootstrapping's like. So I travelled for a few months when I quit my full-time job to decide what I wanted to do, and then when I landed back in Melbourne, the thought of going back to the regular 9 to 5 just wasn't me. So I started freelancing on the side and helping the startups that were struggling. A lot of them were just friends at the time, and realised that with my background in marketing, social media and all of that, I could really start something to help them. And so I didn't know anything about business, so I went and studied small business management full-time before I launched to a T. So it was December 2015. My vision is to be the startup place for entrepreneurs in Melbourne, and hopefully one day Australia-wide. So yeah, we do consider ourselves a resource hub. We provide more than just services. It's more about support and kind of holding a hand along the way. And so we branched out from everything from websites, social media, branding, and then just general startup support. And now I've got a small team of 2 or 3, a couple of subcontractors, and we work from space in one room.
So what are the biggest challenges you're seeing small businesses facing in the space of social media? So when someone's starting a business, what are the immediate things that they're struggling with?
Okay, so the number one challenge that small businesses come to at the very beginning is just not knowing who they're talking to, so who their target audience is. When we ask them that, they usually say anyone that can buy their product or service. Very classic to see, because essentially you do want to service anyone that you can, because you want the income so quickly. But the key to it is just knowing your customer and who they are and where they're hanging out, especially online. So knowing their target audience, and then on top of that, the biggest challenges they face is the time to do it and the knowledge of understanding how social media works. So you'll constantly get startups that are trying to do everything. They're trying to do their own accounting, they're trying to build their own website, they're trying to do their own marketing and social media. So when you do that, you just tend to post for the sake of posting. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges, that if it's not your area, acknowledge that it's your weakness and see where you can get the help.
Yeah, cool. I love that so much. I've talked about on my channel about target markets and finding your target market and really focusing on that one ideal customer and targeting all your communications to them rather than trying to, do this blanket strategy for everybody that could potentially want to purchase your product. So I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Exactly. You always say to look at the bigger brands out there and think who they're targeting. So if you looked at Nike or Apple and think who their target audience is, they're not targeting everyone. Nike is targeting pro athletes, but I will still buy their sneakers. So it's, really having that messaging really strong and being so great that eventually the rest will follow.
As you mentioned before, Tony, small business owners are struggling with budget and find it really hard to work out how they're going to be spending their money. So often they think on social media they're going to get a intern or a junior to do the work for them. So what would you say is a benefit or a con for doing something like that versus hiring an agency like yourself?
I definitely think interns can be great. I mean, we have interns all the time at 2T, and they are great because they're being directed by marketers. But if you have an intern that doesn't have experience or hasn't been educated, um, they can do more damage than good. So what I mean by that is you might have an intern that's posting pretty content and making your feed look good, but if they're not engaging or providing values or generating leads, eventually you're going to have to go back and start from scratch. So I do think there's pros and cons at the early days. I definitely think they're a great resource just to get your social media going. But you're definitely going to have to give them some sort of guidelines and some sort of strategy around it. You'll get a lot of people just posting for the sake of it. And yeah, I think that it really does depend on the intern, but essentially you're going to do a lot more good if you either do it yourself or get an expert to do it for you.
What results have you seen from businesses who have invested in a social media manager, like whether they had given it a go themselves before and the types of results they've seen since actually investing?
So, yeah, the biggest benefit is that outsourcing to people that really understand social media, they understand the storytelling and the benefits, and that yeah, the customer journey and where they are at when they land on your social media and how to engage them, how to connect with them. So when they are ready to purchase, they'll come back to you. And that's kind of essentially how you start creating that community. And yeah, I think that's probably the biggest benefit is social media managers really understand social media. They live and breathe it. They're up to date on their algorithms. They know what an algorithm is. A lot of startups don't really understand that. Where we have to stay on top of it. We have to know Instagram's updates. We have to know what Facebook's doing, and then we have to evolve your content to react to those updates. So unless they're experienced, you won't know that unless you kind of study marketing every day. So
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that idea of social proof. So your social media channel isn't just about being a channel to facilitate leads. It's about creating that bigger picture story about your brand and creating that social proof of having, people engaging with your content rather than just relying on that follower figure, which I think a lot of small businesses just want that follower figure to be massive, but there's no real objective around why they want that.
exactly, and for me, when we get those clients that just want big followings, we really need to understand why they want that. And there can be reasons that people need that kind of vanity factor, and whether they're looking for investors or they want to become an influencer. They're probably the two biggest reasons people will actually need it. Um, but other than that, to me, social media is about creating a community and valuable content, because if you're just flashing your product in their face every day, you're not giving them any reason to follow you. So, yeah, I think our agency and other agencies really just understand that it's key.
So if a small business was thinking, yes, I am resonating with this so much, I'm finding social media really hard and struggling to, get those results that they're after, what would be the process someone would go through when trying to find a social media manager? Or are there any sort of, things to be wary of when you're looking for social media managers?
Yeah, there's definitely a bunch. There've been a big checklist. I'm sure you can Google. But my biggest word of advice is to meet the person and to make sure that you connect with them yourself. I just had a conversation about this with my client. She was looking for another service provider in a different area, and the whole thing was making sure that they understood her personally before they understood her brand. So knowing her needs and wants, and then going into her business goals. So my biggest thing would be to make sure when you engage in someone that they are really wanting to meet you and really wanting to have a briefing session with you. Anyone that's like happy to do it over email, I don't think you can get the connection that you need. You can obviously then go and do your credit check and go and look at their social media. I think a lot of the time you hear if a social media manager is not active on social media themselves, that they're not good. I don't actually stand with that. I think you'll find that social medias, especially the startups, the social media managers, and even to a T, sometimes we can be quiet on our socials because we're managing so many other accounts that we put our clients first. But to make sure that we're doing a good job, when we do let out a piece of content, we make sure it is very valuable and that it is a resource and that there is an objective behind everything we post. So even if the person that you're looking to engage is quiet on their socials, check what they're posting, check their brand, check their consistency, check their reviews, all of that. Do your own credit check the same way you would when you go and eat at a restaurant. You go on Instagram, you look at the food photos, you see reviews, all that sort of stuff. Do that with your social media manager. And they should also want to get to know your target audience inside and out. I wouldn't work with a social media manager if they haven't created a customer audience profile for you, or if you have given them one, they need to know that person almost better than themselves because they're going to be talking to them every day. And social media managers, I think generally by trait are usually quite organised people. They can think on the spot, and they usually think outside the box, but they don't just think about your social media. They ask you what you're doing in the bigger picture, what's happening on your website, what's happening offline, what events are you attending, and they bring all of that into social media. Social media is a tiny part of the marketing strategy, so they need to be across that all. If they're just willing to, post for you, they're not probably thinking about the bigger picture.
Yeah, cool. I love that so much because with social media, especially like Instagram, you can fill your feed with just a whole lot of pretty pictures and lifestyle images that don't really mean anything. And while it does look really visually appealing when someone lands on your account, they're not going to actually engage with any of your posts moving forward, which is part of the whole reason why you're doing it. Otherwise, it's a bit of a waste of time. But how much do social media managers generally charge, or what are the sort of price points that you have found in the market?
It really does depend. Like we usually quote case by case. You've got to look at how much work they're doing. Are they just rebranding for you, or are they designing graphics from scratch? Or are they sourcing imagery for you? Are they taking photos for you? To give a ballpark's fairly hard, but I would generally just look at someone's hourly rate and ask them how many hours a week they look to spend on your social media. You can't really run a social media account without spending a minimum of 3 hours a week. So then times it by their hourly rate and see if it matches up. But yeah, like when I've done my market research, you'll see people charging anywhere from $150 a week to $600 to $1,000 a week. But it really does depend what the person's doing for you, especially if you go down the path of online advertising, the costs are going to go up. So yeah, it is really case by case sort of thing.
So just on that point about pricing, like are there different levels for different quality or different experience levels of the social media managers?
Yeah, definitely. Juniors are always, are a little bit lower. You can see anywhere like in the industry from $60 an hour to $250 an hour. I try and look for someone in the middle of that if you can, and always just ask them if you can see proof of their work, to ask to see their clients. And sometimes you can't, like they've signed disclosures to say that they can't say who their clients are, but you need some sort of proof. So ask them for a case study or ask them for reviews. Again, check their social media and see what they're doing, just to know how experienced they are.
Yeah, cool. I love that so much. So just to kind of close, what would be your number one tip if someone was going, yes, I need help with my social media, what would be the first thing that you would get them to do?
Probably a couple of steps before you get to a social media manager is just to really define what your messaging is. So that quick elevator pitch, get that done. Then really think about your target audience, that person. I like to tell my clients to think of a friend or someone that they know that fits their target audience perfectly, and just write that down, what that person is, what their traits are, where they hang out, what clothes they buy, all of that, before you reach the social media manager, because you've done a big chunk of the work. But whether you do it yourself or you engage with someone, it is just learning how to tell your brand story and provide value to your audience.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Tony. Where can people find more about you and To A T?
You can go to our website, which is just www.toatstartup.com.au, or over on Instagram at toatstartup. So it's the number 2, AT Startup.
Well, I'll provide all the links in my description below. So thank you so much again. Thanks for sharing all your knowledge. You're so experienced in this area. And I'm sure any side hustlers and small business owners would have found this so valuable.
Awesome. Thank you.
So what do you think? Does this make you feel like you need a social media manager now? I sure do. It's really about building that brand story on social media that makes social media managers' role so important. Not just post pretty pictures on your Instagram account, but actually deliver great results and build an engaged community that will lead to sales. Just be aware, follower count isn't necessarily an indicator of success. It's a vanity metric. So if you have any social media managers that you're approaching that say that they can give you a certain follower account, don't trust them. It's about building this organically. That's important. So once again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and please give it the thumbs up and comment below with whether you've ever hired a social media manager or whether you want to now. I release new episodes of the Side Hustlers Handbook every week, so make sure you subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when my next video goes live. Well, that's it for me for another day, so until next time, bye for now.